So I had made a post earlier about, predators in apartment buildings, like through maintenance, and a person has asked me how to screen out off the book maintenance people. Hi, my name is Dr. Natalie Jones. I'm a licensed therapist, and I appreciate this question so much. But it says, how do you screen out off the book employees, maintenance people when apartment hunting? So let me first of all let me give you some background as to why I do this. I've spoken about this experience before, but I just want people to be clear about why I'm hyper vigilant when doing this. So some years ago, I was living in an apartment, and I ended up, I had a shelf full of books, across my back wall there. And what ended up happening was there was a leak, which that apartment, a leak in the roof and like down the side of the building or something like that, in which the apartment I was living in had sent a maintenance guy to go look at it. He was an undocumented worker, and that, needless to say, that was something that he could not fix. And it was really beyond the scope, and they really weren't trying to pay for that. And so what ended up happening, unbeknownst to me, is I ended up getting mold, black mold or mold, essentially all inside of that back wall. And all of my belongings had to be thrown in the trash, because unfortunately by the time I discovered it, it was a huge issue. And I just happened to discover it by happenstance by moving the bookcase one day, and boom, wall is just covered. And I had been having all of these symptoms, and so now I'm very hyper vigilant, not just necessarily about making sure that maintenance people are paid on the books as employees, but also that apartments. Uh, Managers or property managers are doing their due diligence to care for their property. I would say that's probably the number one thing for me. That kind of helps to screen out off the book employees, is making sure that management is not just taking your money, but they actually care about the property that you're living in, outside of just me, the tenant, but the property is well cared for. So what I do is this, both with maintenance and with the apartment manager. And so far, this has worked for me. But I will give a hypothetical example of a problem and see how they fix it. And I will just use, and by the way, I grew up in a family of contractors. So I kind of have a little bit of knowledge about how some contract work is supposed to work. I'll give them a hypothetical example, and I've used what actually happened to me. Okay, there was a roof leak, and how do you go about fixing that? And if they say, well, we'll send Joe up there and have him take a look at it and see if he can, patch, that's already out, because I already know maintenance can't necessarily do that. So if there's a roof leak, you need to be looking at a roofer and doing that. And then not only that, I've asked them about like sink leaks or like major problems, and seeing how they go about fixing things like that. So usually the maintenance will say, hey, this is what I can do. And then after that, they've got to call maybe like a plumber or whoever else can come and fix it. So just making sure that the apartment manager is going to spend the money and hire the appropriate person to fix said problem, as opposed to trying to get send some maintenance guy out there to go fix it. That's number two. So number three would be, I've talked with maintenance separately. So for example, where I live now, I've talked with him separately, and I've talked with them, the apartment managers, and I asked him about his work history. Just like where's he worked and what's the thing, what's the deal. And so where I live now, the guy was he's kind of retiring, so he's getting up there in age, and so this is a step down job for him. But prior to doing this, he was a licensed contractor, and so he did all types of work as a licensed contractor, where he was licensed and bonded, and so he's shared that with me, as well as like they were able to share with me, you know. How he was hired and how long he's been with the organization, or been with this particular place, I should say. So they were able to talk with me about that. In the case that there's more than one maintenance person, especially if they're non-English speaking, I always ask like when they were hired, and where you hired them from. So if they were all hired, for example, on the same day, to me, the next question would be, are they day laborers? Are they guys that you just kind of picked up? That kind of thing. Or if they can't tell me any real solid work history, things where they've been at a place for years, or how they got their school, their education and being able to do this, that kind of stuff. Then red flags go up. I also ask about upkeep, just management and upkeep of the property on the exterior. So the place where I live at now, they're pretty diligent. They have lawn and landscaping, so that's coming out weekly. They have pest control, things like that. So they're on it, as well as they stay on. They make sure that every tenant is like keeping their space free of clutter, so their doorways aren't cluttered, their patios and things like that aren't cluttered. Plus, the grounds are monitored. So they do a pretty good job of that. I've also asked them about what their background check process is, who they use for their background checks, and how extensive that is. So I have asked about that, and whether or not they allow people with criminal records to work here, and they've assured me that they do not, and what their standards and expectations are in terms of work experience before they hire somebody. So I've gone over that with them when I was touring the apartment place. A lot of things I try to screen out prior to moving in, but some of that I'm not able to screen until I moved in. So an example of things that I wasn't able to screen until I moved in was I had some issue. I think it was with the sink, or it was something that was like it needed a major repair. My sink flooded. It just kind of flooded, and so. The maintenance guy came to look at it, and he said, I can't do it. They had to call a plumber. So they contacted a plumber, and they were able to do that. But then also, too, they added the extra, like they had to take out, like I made them take out the cabinet space, everything that had been drenched in water. I had them take that out back underneath the sink and things like that, where there was standing water, and so they took all that out, and they just did all the necessary things that they needed to do. They go the extra mile to kind of do the repairs and make sure I'm okay. They do little surveys after maintenance, want me to do surveys after maintenance leave. How did he do? That kind of stuff. So that's kind of some of the things that I can think of right off the top of my head that helps me to vet that process a little bit more. I hope that helps. Thanks for asking.